touch from the Master will make you whole again. All you need is just one touch, one healing touch.
Hello, praise the Lord. Welcome to Healing Touch. I am your host, Dr. Gina Miller, and today our topic of discussion is healing through counsel. I have a very, very exciting guest with me today. Her name is Dr. Adwua Akhu. And Dr. Akhu is going to speak to us about her work as a clinical licensed psychologist and how she has helped many people to come to a place of healing through counsel. The scripture verse that I would like to focus on today, actually there are two, is they're both found in the book of Proverbs. In the book of Proverbs, in the 11th chapter, the Bible reads in verse 14, "Where no counsel is, the people fall, but in the multitude of counselors there is safety." And also in Proverbs chapter 15, verse 22, the Bible reads, "Without counsel, purposes are disappointed, but in the multitude of counselors, they are established." And so today our focus is that you can be healed through counsel. And Dr. Akhu is going to help us to know a little bit more about why counsel is so important for healing. Dr. Akhu, thank you so much for coming to the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I was looking at your website, which is drakhu.com.
That's correct.
And I was so impressed at all of the great work that you've done. And just to know that this work is available for us in the community is very enlightening. And I would like to talk about a lot of things, and we only have a little bit of time. We can't talk about it all, but the work that you're doing with domestic violence is really, really important. What can you share with our audience today about how they can be healed by getting counseling after being a victim of domestic violence?
After domestic violence, counseling is incredibly important because it helps people figure out their lives again, figure out how to grow and move forward in healthy relationships with themselves and healthy relationships with others. And because domestic violence changes the way people think and experience the world, it's very important that they have someone to counsel them to help them find a new, healthier path.
Okay. That is, I have, experiences where I've known people who have, suffered from domestic violence. Domestic violence maybe from a spouse, but also domestic violence in their family, crazy situations where they grew up in homes where every other day someone had a fight with someone. And I look at the effect that has on children. And statistically, I'm sure there are numbers that show that children who grow up in violent homes tend to, grow up to become adults that also perpetrate violence. Have you seen a lot of that in your practice?
I have seen a lot of that. It really, growing up in a violent home really skews the way you see relationships, so that you think that that's what's normal. That's what's healthy. You see love as somebody getting angry and jealous because you're talking to somebody else, so that they display that by hitting you. That must mean they love you, as opposed to understanding that love does not have those kinds of conditions on it, that people, when they're jealous, they're being possessive, they're not being loving. But really, we understand love based on what we grow up with. Yeah. And if that's what you grow up with, then that's what you think is love until you get some kind of counsel, until you have some other way of thinking about it. And you need help to change those ways of thinking and really learn to think different ways.
Right. That is so true. I was looking at your website, and I came across the book Metamorphosis. Tell us a little bit about Metamorphosis.
Metamorphosis, Journaling the Path from Domestic Violence Victim to Victor, is a self-help book. I found that especially victims of domestic violence, when you just leave, you very often don't have a lot of money. And counsel, unfortunately, takes some money. It costs money. Yes. So in realizing that and working with so many clients in my office, I realized there's so many people who I can't reach. because they just can't afford to come in and see me, or just because maybe they live someplace else where they can't get to me. So I decided to take a lot of the exercises I use with the people that I work with and put them in a book so that people could heal themselves. I think that, of course, it's best if you can use that in conjunction with a therapist.
Right.
That there are exercises there that you can go even deeper with if you have somebody to talk to about them. But if not, this gives you at least some resource to start to counsel yourself as a place to start.
Well, is there maybe something in the book that you would like to focus or, a highlight or something that you can share with the audience that are watching us tonight, and to give them an idea of what they can find in the book of Metamorphosis?
Okay. The book is basically, it's many different chapters on many different issues that people face when they are building their lives after domestic violence. So issues like isolation, like dealing with fear, dealing with anger, and dealing with depression. So in each chapter on that particular topic, there are spirit support exercises, things, because I do believe that the stronger your spirit is, the more you are able to handle anything and everything that comes at you in life. So there are exercises to help people become more spiritually grounded. Then there are meditation exercises to help people relax.
Right.
And then there are journaling exercises so that people can really start the healing process through writing. And different journaling exercises, for example, writing a letter to your abuser. It's not a letter that you actually ever mail to them,
Right.
but it gives you an opportunity to really say all the things that you wish you could say, and process your experience through writing. So that's one of the many examples in the book.
Okay. And I could see that, that book would be an excellent tool to help someone to find healing through counsel, as you said, even if they can't afford to attend counseling on a regular basis. I also noticed that on the website there are free downloads
Yes.
of excerpts of different publications that you have on the website. So even if they're not able to, I guess, readily buy the book right away,
Yes.
they can avail themselves of some information that would be helpful.
In addition, I have a blog.
Okay.
So they can go to the blog, and on the blog are many of the journaling exercises, many of the spirit support exercises that are there. The complete book is not there, but there's a lot there that people can access for free to begin the healing process.
Okay. Give me an example of an exercise of one of the spirit support exercises.
One of the spirit support suggestions from the shame chapter, because I find that many women, people that experience domestic violence, because not everybody that's experienced domestic violence is a woman, of course, the shame is a big part of the recovery process. Really learning how to let go of all the shame from being involved in a domestic violence relationship. So in the shame chapter, I talk about how to let that go by creating mantras. For example, and a mantra is a statement that you make to yourself that helps support your spirit, that helps support what you believe and what you think. One of my favorite mantras is replace fear with faith. Because the two cannot occupy the same space at the same time. If you have faith, then you can't have fear. So when I find myself in a fearful situation, I say to myself, replace fear with faith, and that helps strengthen me so that I'm able to continue moving forward without letting fear take charge. So in the spirit support exercise, I ask people to really start to examine what they're ashamed of. If you are ashamed that you allowed yourself to be hit, if that's the one of the things that you are ashamed of, then I would suggest that you find some way to come up with a mantra that helps you release that shame. So a mantra for that situation might be that the abuser's behavior was not appropriate. So that you're no longer focusing on the thing that you're ashamed of, but really creating a different way of thinking about things to help you move forward.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And this is why I wanted to talk to you and to create a topic around healing through counsel, because I feel that a lot of times people do experience, of course, things on so many different levels, but because counseling and receiving counseling is shunned and
Yes.
people are ashamed of getting counsel, then they stay ill for a very, very long time. And so just hearing you speak about spirit support, mechanism that is put in such a simple term is something that should empower those who have been ashamed to say to themselves, you know what, I can get through this. And just even by simply saying to myself, because I've heard Dr. Akhu on Healing Touch talk about saying something positive to myself to help me.
Yes.
If I can do that before actually, getting a counselor to go and see, or if I never go see a counselor, at least I can utilize this technique. And, it's like you said, fear, replacing your fear with faith. And oftentimes I think of faith the way I see darkness and light, is that if you turn off the light, of course, then it's dark.
Right.
But if you just shine a little flicker of light in a dark room, darkness has to flee. It's gone. It's non-existent because of that small flicker of light. And so if you have just a small, minuscule amount of faith, then fear has to flee. And that's just the way I see it, the same way, a grain of mustard seed, the faith the size of a grain of mustard seed. And you can say to that mountain, be thou removed and cast into the sea, and it will be done. And so if you replace that fear with faith, your faith will totally, overpower that fear. Where the fear looked like it was huge, just a small amount of faith will totally dissipate your fear.
Yes.
And so that is the wonderful thing about counsel. And it's my hope and my prayer that people will be able to look at counseling in a new light, not to be ashamed to go to counsel.
I think that part of the reason why people are so ashamed is that especially in communities of color, there's still that stigma that you have to be crazy if you go to counsel.
Right.
And the reality is you're probably crazy if you don't go. I mean, counsel is there to support you.
Right.
To help you heal. I think people also don't understand what I do in my office. They think that I'm going to tell them what to do. Not my job at all. It's your life.
Yes.
My job is to help you get clarity on what you want to do in your life.
Right.
Whatever that is, because that's your life. I have to tell me what to do in my life.
Right.
But in your life, you're the one in charge. But it's helpful to have somebody to ask you those questions to get you to think about things.
Yes.
So that as one of my patients described, she said, you help me hear my own voice. I had trouble hearing me because everybody else in my family was telling me what they wanted me to do. My mother had one thing, my boyfriend had something else, and what you did was help me clarify my own voice so I could make my own decision. And that's a lot of what goes on in counseling, is really helping people find their own voices as opposed to being subject to what other people want them to do.
Right. Wow, and it's so important. I also noticed that you do workshops.
I do workshops.
And so some of the workshops that you do cover different topics: bereavement, anger management, HIV/AIDS, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about those workshops and how we can, possibly use you to help our organizations that need help.
I do custom workshops for any organization. So really, I go in before I do the workshop, find out who's in the audience. Are we going to be working with professionals, with people who don't know a lot about psychology? How many people? I've done workshops for parents groups, for doctors and hospitals. It really, it's one of my favorite things to do as a psychologist, to impart the information that I have and help people learn and grow in a group together. So I do a lot of workshops, of course, on domestic violence because that's my area of specialty, how domestic violence affects children, what are the signs of domestic violence, why women stay in domestic violence situations, which I think is always an issue that people who are striving to support women don't understand why they might stay. So that's one of the topics I talk on, and all you have to do is go to my website, drakhu.com, and send me a message, and I'll be happy to contact you about creating a workshop for your organization.
Right. And then also the topic that interests me a lot also was the adoption. I saw that the download, the free download under the
Yes.
publications about adoption. Tell me about that. What prompted you to start that?
I've done some work with foster care and adoption, and I specifically worked for quite a while as a consultant with one agency where I did workshops with parents who were foster care parents or adoptive parents, and a lot of parenting workshops, helping them understand the issues that foster care and adoptive children go through in terms of feeling abandoned and issues with their birth parents versus adoptive parents. And through that work, I decided to write an article on helping adoptive children feel like family. And it really talks about some methods you can use to help children to talk about adoption with your children, and then to help them really feel like a part of the family, even though they were not born into the family. So that is available free at drakhu.com. Anybody can download it, and it's one of the topics that I do some workshops on.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Now I have had discussions about domestic violence in the past on Healing Touch. We talked about what happens in domestic violence. We talked even about domestic violence and the church's response to that topic. But we haven't had a lot of people on the show that talked about domestic violence where men were affected by domestic violence, or even male children affected. The focus is usually mainly on women.
Right.
What's your experience with
Well,
that?
the statistics say that about somewhere between 85 and 95% of the people who are victims are women. However, we know that that means that somewhere between 5 and 15% of the other victims are men. I also believe that that is underreported, because I think it's harder for men in this society to talk about being victims.
Right.
But certainly domestic violence is, anybody can be a victim of domestic violence. I think that it's harder for men to reach out for help, which is another reason why I wrote the book, because I thought that maybe men who weren't willing to go to counseling might be able to get some support, better understanding about domestic violence, and some healing through the book.
Right.
Men are victimized in the same way. I know we don't think about physical abuse with men, but certainly, especially if a man was raised to not raise a hand against a woman, but his wife decides to pick up a pot against him, then that would be abuse. A lot for men, though, it's emotional abuse, belittling, putting them down, trying to control who they see and what they do. And because domestic violence is about the relationship between the two people, then men are equally subject to being victims.
Wow. Well, that is definitely, I feel like you said, the number may be 5 to 15%, but even if it's 15 or 20% and it's underreported, it is an important number that we need to look at more,
Yes.
Especially those who are involved in healing.
Yes, I wrote a blog actually about that, because I know it's not something that gets talked about very much. And one of the issues too is for men, there aren't a lot of shelters for men. There are a lot of domestic violence shelters specifically for women, where women can flee with their children. But where does a man go if he is the victim and he has children he wants to protect? In the United States, I don't believe we have one, not that I'm aware of. The one that I wrote about was in Canada. But it was just very interesting that we're starting to, again, widen the scope of services available to people who are victims.
Okay. Well, maybe that's might be another next project for you.
No.
Well, it's definitely out there now, so somebody's going to have to take it on.
Yes. That's not my next project.
Wow. Well, I really, as I said, am very impressed and very happy to see the website, finally to look through the website and see all of the work that you do. And I look forward to coming back, and hopefully we're able to possibly do a call-in show.
Oh, that would be great.
And where we can take some calls from people who may have questions for you. But in the meantime, they can reach you at drakhu.com.
Akhu.com. There are links to my blogs because I'm also working on my current book. Is You Don't Have to Be Crazy to See a Psychologist, which is really the whole idea is to dispel some of the myths and the stigma around seeing a therapist, getting counsel.
Right.
So on my blog, there are some sections of that book. Certainly some areas of the domestic violence book are on a blog.
Okay.
So all you have to do is go to drakhu.com, and there's lots of information, all of it free.
All of it free. Great. Now, one point I forgot to touch on was dating after domestic violence.
Yes.
Interesting topic. Take about 2 minutes to talk about that.
Okay. Dating after domestic violence. I'll be doing a talk on that in this coming summer. And one of the things with domestic violence, of course, is the loving relationship.
Right.
And many people then have fear to go out again. And very often when people do go out again, they find a new domestic violence relationship. So the whole idea about dating after domestic violence is to help people better understand what happens in a domestic violence relationship and how to recognize the signs early on.
Right.
So that the next relationship will not have the same issues.
Right. And now, you mentioned the signs early on. What are some signs in dating that should
help
raise
you.
raise the
red
flags?
One of the main signs is being jealous. Very often people think that when somebody's jealous, that means that they really care about you. They're really concerned. But in a healthy relationship, then unless you're giving the person some reason to be jealous, I mean, certainly if they catch you kissing somebody else, they have every reason to be jealous.
Yeah.
But if you're just talking to somebody, it's certainly appropriate for women to have male friends. But when somebody is jealous, then that's usually a sign that they are likely to be controlling, and therefore there's likely to be domestic violence.
Right. And also, would you say that even after someone has gone through a situation of domestic violence, there should be a time frame, before you begin to date again?
You need to take the time to heal.
Yeah.
To heal and to understand how you got in that situation, how that's affected you, and to really know what you want to look for in the future.
Right. I find that is sometimes the case, or I should say the reason why someone would go from one domestic violence relationship or violent relationship. I hate to use that whole word. It's a domestic violence relationship. No, you didn't sign up for that.
Right.
But maybe something like that, this is something that may have happened as a result of a bad relationship. So I find that if you leave one relationship that resulted where there was violence and horrible breakup and made it out by the hair of your chinny chin chin or whatever, and you jump right into a relationship so soon before you even begin to heal, as you said, then you tend to just, repeat the same thing that you did before. So insanity, right? The definition, right?
Right, continuing doing the same thing and expect a different outcome.
And expecting different outcomes. And we're still doing the same thing. So then how can we expect anything to be different? So healing through counsel has to be first. You know, if you've come through a situation that, you made it out just by the hair of your chinny chin chin, you just like tore up, as some people say, tore from the floor up, but not to make it light, I'm not trying to, make it light, but a really bad situation. How can you get into a situation where you're now in a loving relationship after you're still feeling so much pain? And that's why you have to have healing through counsel. And that counsel has to come first for you, and then you can begin to love someone else.
Exactly. I think that's the point. If you don't love you,
right,
you can't really love someone else. And you can't recognize love from someone else if you don't truly love you.
Right.
But in order to get back to that place, because what domestic violence does is it takes away your ability to love and appreciate and honor yourself. If you have to get back to that place before you can go on and have a healthy relationship. Exactly. And it really leaves you vulnerable to having more unhealthy relationships when you feel like you don't love yourself, then you're willing to accept anything from someone else.
Right. And that's the meat of it, love, love. So I am so sorry that we are at the end of our program,
Okay.
but I am very happy that we were able to begin this discussion, and we will continue it because healing through counsel is first. And we want to invite all of our listeners to, again, as we said 3 times before, but we're going to say it again. I want you guys to just log on to drakhu.com, and you can find her on info@drakhu.com, or you can just type in drakhu.com, and you will find all of her information. You'll find even a complete resume of her accomplishments and certifications and different papers that she has written and work that she has done in the community. And you will definitely find someone that can help you to find healing through counsel if you contact Dr. Adwua Akhu at drakhu.com. Thank you for watching Healing Touch. This has definitely been a healing touch today. God bless you.
One healing touch, one touch from the Master will make you whole again. All you need is just one touch, one healing touch, just one touch of His love. Though you've been hurt before, your heart has been broken, your world was torn in two. I know someone who cares. He's knocking at your door, waiting to come in. Just one touch, one healing touch, one touch from the Master will make you whole again. All you need is just one touch, one healing touch, just one touch